My name is Matt Weiner, and I am the creator and executive producer of Mad Men. And the episode we're going to watch right now is Indian Summer, which is episode 11. And it was written by Tom Palmer and myself.
Hello, this is Elisabeth Moss, and I play Peggy Olson. Tim Hunter's wonderful. He directed quite a few of our episodes, and there's a reason for that. He's very, very good. I enjoyed working with him very much. He's very sweet, almost sort of soft-spoken, but very funny, and really gets the show. I think that's just the qualifying factor for a director for our show, is they just have to get it.
We were at a point in the season where I had spent all this time telling the story about Peggy getting fatter at work, which I thought was a pretty amazing story, and we'd gone to all this trouble to get the weight right and the makeup right. And then this, of course, this is Adam Whitman, who is Don or Dick Whitman's brother. And this is the cruddy hotel that he lives in that we've seen in episode 5 and 5G. We haven't seen him since then. And the storytelling is done here, obviously, with mystery. We don't know what's going on. We know Don gave him $5,000. And he, of course, looks worse for wear, even though he's wearing a suit. And now we know what's going on. So here we come to Peggy. She's got her fat makeup on, which is pretty amazing. It's a lighting challenge. It's a makeup challenge. She's in her fat suit. And I worked all this time to talk about someone at work who's getting heavier and how that's her response to being sexualized. And we never really paid it off. And I was like, oh, my God, I've got to do that story. I have to pay it off. So here she is at work. She's eating.
So this is now 111, so Peggy has definitely gained quite a bit of weight. I think this was the last stage. I'm not sure if this was the last stage or the second to last. I think it might have been the last. And I'm starting to wear the prosthetic makeup.
Didn't you handle most of Mr.
There were 2 stages of prosthetic makeup, and it took about, I think it took about an hour maybe. It took at least that long to get it on. And the makeup artists who did it, the special effects guys, were absolutely fantastic. So good and so nice and so sweet. And they did an amazing job. It's not easy to do, to make that kind of a thing look realistic, and especially to make it look good after 12 hours on set. And they did such an amazing job. So there were 2 stages of it. There's, I believe, 2 episodes in the first stage and then 1 episode in the second stage. The makeup was so good that there was actually 1 more stage of padding that we decided not to go to because the makeup did the trick. And it was not easy, for sure. It was uncomfortable, but it looks amazing, and it really does the job, and it really makes her look like she has gained weight. And it was Matt's idea, I believe.
Better you.
Well, that helps a little.
So I kind of love this scene because it's a huge piece of plot, and here is what I think one of the greatest props I've ever come in contact with. I saw this in a store about 6 years ago in some consignment store in the East Coast. And the first thing that occurred to me is, what is this weight loss thing? And if it vibrates, what else does it do? And we found out, because the company was defunct, that we could actually use the real product and not have to build a prop. So that's actually one of those things. They have their problem with this product is that they really can't prove that it's a weight loss device, but they can't prove that it produces weight loss. And it's sort of vaguely mentioned here by Pete that the government is, clamping down on truth in advertising. There was actually a law passed, so they can't just say it. Peggy brings him in a glass of water because there's a heat wave, and we can see how big she is. And I think about a month has passed since Long Weekend.
She's obviously losing.
It's funny because from the first episode to now, personally, as an actor, I had changed so much in regard to how I felt with wearing the padding. The first episode, I was totally freaked out and didn't like it. I was very self-conscious. I was uncomfortable. I did not like it at all. And now I was so used to it. I was totally fine, felt totally normal to me. It was hot for sure. It was not comfortable physically, but just emotionally, I was totally fine with it. And it's funny, walking around like that, you kind of get rid of any body issues that you might have. You kind of tend to, it's hard to explain. I don't know.
says.
And this idea, believe it or not, this is from the writer's room in my lifetime when there's a woman writer, and there's usually just one, not on my show, but usually there's just one. And whenever something comes up about that relates to females, they always say, well, you're a woman. Of course, for Peggy, it's loaded because why would she be perfect for a weight loss device? It's kind of painful.
It's an assignment.
Oh, this is great. This is the relaxation, which is a real object. I don't know what exactly you would call it, but it's a real thing. Somebody gave me an old magazine that has Grace Kelly on the cover and an ad for the relaxation inside. So it's a real thing, and that was the real object, not a prop that we made. That's the real thing. And this is a great scene because she's sort of getting more and more confident, like we've talked about before, and she's really coming into her own. It's one of the rare times I get to wear my hair down.
I never even got any.
I had some people.
So there are two things going on in this scene. One is that Peggy's eating everything, which is kind of funny. The other thing is
I have work to do.
that Peggy works when she gets home. Her ambition is one of the most endearing things to me about her. She's always reading and she's always working and she takes this stuff seriously. Now, the humor in this is pretty obvious. You have this amazing prop. Don't just throw it away. Let's really see it. She doesn't know what it does. That's really the device.
I love doing this scene because there's no dialogue. I have quite a few scenes like that during the season where there is no dialogue, and it's really fun as an actor to do because it's like silent film almost, and you just have to do everything with physicality. And I love doing it. This day, I think I had maybe 3 or 4 scenes without dialogue. And it was like acting in a silent film all day. It was really fun. And this scene I just did exactly as written.
And look at the padding on her. It's just really amazing how transformed she is. And this was all in the script, that she would slide it on under her nightgown, that she would be wearing a frumpy nightgown. She turns it on. We added some sound effects to the device. It doesn't make any noise. And she gets a sensation from it. And this was in the script, that she would stand up and take it off and kick it with her foot and stare at it. Like, what have you done to me? What was that?
It's so fun as an actor when you get to do those kind of things.
Now we're back at our heat wave. Fans on. Betty's alone in the house. And there's a noise. This is really about her being alone. There's no one to take care of her. She said that a few times during the season. Empty bed. And where is her husband? And this was a tough thing to do because I realized that Don really has feelings for this woman. And it was hard to figure out how to write it because I understood as a man what it's like to have an infatuation with another person, but I've been married a long time and I really have never been in love with anyone else. And I felt Don had to be in love with her, and I resisted it at first.
I don't think about it.
And Rachel tells him that she's thinking about it all the time and thinking about them being together. And what comes up is that he hasn't figured out what to do yet with his wife. And that's sort of his story in this. Is there a future for them? And he sort of suggests, as lovers do, especially married men, that there is a future. She's even embarrassed to ask, is there more? They were just together the last episode. And she resisted him. She really didn't want to be in it, and now she's just in it. I haven't figured out what to do yet. That means that there is a future and that it involves probably leaving Betty. There's no other way for anyone to take anything else out of this. This was harkening back to the pilot. Don has spent the night with his mistress. Gets his shirt out. Peggy walks in. There's an awkwardness. This is sort of the scene that I knew when we had this weight belt and she tried it, and I knew that this would be fun. And we just kept working on this scene. I kept working on this scene to make it the maximum embarrassment, which is that there's a social thing where Don's her boss, and he's pushing her on it. She doesn't want to say what it is because it's so embarrassing. Him getting dressed helps the embarrassment.
So that's obviously a throwback to the pilot with him changing his shirt. This is a great scene because it's one of the only times that you see Dawn slightly flustered and a little embarrassed. And it was actually kind of a difficult scene to do because there's a dynamic here that neither of us were used to playing with Peggy and Dawn, this sort of being embarrassed in front of each other kind of thing. But it came off really well. It's hysterical because she's trying so hard not to say what the relaxation does, and he's just not getting it. She's having to be more and more explicit.
Sensation.
Yes.
And of course, the fun of the scene here is look at John Hamm here, how embarrassed he is. That's the fun of it, is that he's just as embarrassed as she is. So women having orgasms with this machine. He says, okay, we have a benefit. That's how it's succeeded. And they act like nothing's happened. This is one of my favorite moments in the show because he treats her like a colleague and gives her a piece of advice that's so valuable that I wish someone had given me at some point in my career. Don't dwell on it. Just put it out of your mind and it'll happen. And she takes it that way.
Thank you.
I love that moment because it shows how they really are friends. And he does really actually think that she has something to offer, and she respects him and listens to him. And it's one of the rare, honest moments of the show where two people are being honest with each other. It really shows their relationship that they are honest with each other, to an extent.
Now, this was a solution to a problem that ended up helping the story, which is that we shot this on the set and we couldn't really show the outside. And not showing this guy at the beginning just made it more enticing and more mysterious. As soon as I heard this is what we had to do, I'm like, that's great. Let's not see the guy. And we know immediately that there's some tension for Betty. And what the scene was about to me, and I think January did a great job on it, and this guy did too, was that there is all this tension for her. And there's nothing for him. He's selling an air conditioning. This is what it's like when you're lonely, and the tiniest thing in your life can set off a fantasy.
Many units.
It's a big deal for her to be alone with this man in her house. She tries to disarm it. She says, I'm married. My husband's a salesman. Don't try to sell me stuff. And this guy is a good salesman. He does not give up. And everything he says to her is loaded with sexual energy for her. It's about heat patterns, and of course they need one up in the bedroom. He's making a sale. And for her, this is the event of her day. But as she realizes she's going upstairs, this is becoming more than what she wants. She's actually too uncomfortable with it. She's had enough. It's too much. And there's great subtext in here because we know she's lonely and we can see that something's going on for her, and this guy keeps going about his business. And then she kicks him out of the house. Great little music cue here. The tiny little thing that David Carbonara did here that tells us something's wrong. This is more for her. Here's another introduction of a story, which is that the Lucky Strike people are coming back. And this is another thing drawn from real business, which is that Roger's heart attack has actually made the firm insecure. Because he's the one who's been handling the account. And Cooper basically said, well, come on up and see him. And they called him on it. And Don's like, well, that's weird. You're gonna bring him in here, and you see genuine worry. I love the scene. I feel like her sister behaves like her sister. And Rachel can't tell her sister that she's slept with him. And the Chinese restaurant, of course, was essential. That's where Jews eat. She mumbles it. She can't even say it. And her sister gives the reaction that a real sister would give. Lie. And here Maggie really reminds me of like an old movie star. There's this vulnerability and honesty that she's dying to tell somebody about this. Even in this context, even with the judgment. I think she's thinking of a place in the sun, and it's not a husband, but... And here you have a nice little irony with the fortune cookie, and they really feel like they're sisters. They're not overly warm to each other, but they have an honest language, and everything that's embarrassing about it and that's dangerous about it, it's sort of out in the open. And it's a heat wave. Don hasn't been home. Now he's home tonight. And this scene is really interesting to me because January has this thing, it's not in the script, where she rubs his chest when you know it's like an overture to sex. And he, of course, his heart is elsewhere, and he's actually rejecting her. And her rejection she responds to it by trying to make him jealous. And the way she does it is the way it would really be done, I think, the way we do these things in life. She just says it. She's not calculated. It just happens. It's hot. They want an air conditioner. That little move that she does there, that's not in the script. That's just like beautiful. It just tells that there's something is at stake here. She's defensive.
Look, you didn't want to spend the money.
Good night, Betty.
I don't think that's the reaction she wanted. I think she wanted to be attacked or something, but she certainly got some reaction. Now, this was tough because we wanted him to look sick, but not too sick. And the truth is John's a very healthy-looking person. He's got a very warm skin tone. He spends a lot of time in the sun. So the idea was he should be putting up a brave face. And Pete gives his great kiss-ass laugh. And this is really, that his wife would really be concerned about him. She knows she knows what's going on here, but she's not happy about it. This is a man who just had a heart attack at minimum a month ago. He should not be there. I think that's great, because Pete basically tells the truth. They say what you're supposed to say. And here he is. You get to feel his real emotions. He gets back in that office. That's where he had the heart attack. You can't pretend like everything's normal. Now, this scene, I don't remember, I think Robin might have come up with this, but we knew this was almost the whole thing for this, that the episode was built around this to some degree, I will not lie, was that he would need to be made presentable. And then he says honey to her, and they both react to this because there's been no indication in the past that they have a relationship. But the scene of her having to make him up alone so that he can go in and fool the cigarette people into thinking he's healthy. We knew it was a moment. It's the first time they've seen each other since he was sick. He, of course, had a heart attack in the arms of another woman, but it doesn't mean anything because she does have feelings for him. Because that's who he is. She's a very special character. I mean, so is he, but that's the only reference we make to the debates. I think people thought we were going to do it on the show, but I love the idea that it just passed by the way it did in real life. All the analysis of the debates and how Nixon lost it at that moment really didn't happen until long, long after the election, or at least months after the debates. He expresses his affection for her, and I think you expect him to say something so profound and so warm to her. The line that was originally in the script was the only thing that was censored the entire time of the season. Instead of saying, I'm so glad I got to roam those hillsides, he said, I'm so lucky I got to be inside you. And I thought, well, this is a pornographic line, there's no doubt about it, but it's something that only adults can understand. But to tell you the truth, I liked the line that they made me change it to tell you the truth. I mean, I wrote that line. But what you got is that this is a man who almost died, and he's seen his life in an existential reality. We saw him embrace his wife and everything. We saw how he doesn't want to die. But here he is a month later, and he's looking at this woman and saying, you know what? I am so lucky I got to have you. And David Carbonaro did a great version of their music in here that I think just makes the scene really poignant. I think everyone feels like Roger. Now, Francine, who's been pregnant the whole time, has had her baby. We didn't have to live through that. And I had originally put in here that she was breastfeeding, and everyone pointed out that nobody was breastfeeding in this socioeconomic group at this point. It was really considered third world. And Annie is fantastic here. You can tell she's already not happy about having a child. Of course, she's smoking in the nursery, because getting up and leaving would wake the baby. And Betty's just thinking about what she said. And she reveals this, which we know from Don's reaction, that letting this man in the house is a big deal. She said, Carlton would break my arm if I did it. Don was as violent as we've seen him, physically threatening to her, other than the time that Roger hit on her in the kitchen. Why did she tell him? Because she's being ignored. She wanted to make him jealous. And she lies to Francine and says that he was jealous, when in fact, see, she turns it into something positive. And her ability to lie to herself like that denial, that's something that's going on the entire season. Here we have John Cullum, fantastic actor who was in the pilot. It was great to bring him back. It shows some consistency to this world. And I thought, this was from Jerry Della Femina. He mentioned this about how the cigarette guys would come in and go through the ashtrays, so I put that in the show. And here comes Roger putting on his show. And of course, it's important. Also, I'm always talking about New York. You have this southern guy here, and he's eating New York specialty, deli. And Roger's character is someone who's not going to pussyfoot around this. He just says it right away. I know why you're here. And then they start talking about Lucky Strike, which we've mentioned a few times throughout the season, that there's a lawsuit going on. Now, Lucky Strike lost the lawsuit, but there were no damages, and that was good news for the tobacco companies because it meant that it wasn't going to cost them any money. But they knew that there was a perception issue. And what we see here that's important is that Don really runs this. And he's very confident about it. Now, Roger lights a cigarette, grabs a sandwich, and I knew that this, to me, this may be my sensibilities, but this is one of the funniest things that happens in the show is him having this second heart attack. They bring him in for this whole point, and there it is again. Now, it's funny on paper, and then when you actually see this character you care about doing this,
Just give him some air. Give him some air.
it's hard to watch. And they react in a real way. And we went back in and did a dialogue replacement on one of those lines where he says, "Oh no, not again." And here it is. Here we are back in the hallway. Only this time his wife's there. Joan is standing there watching it. Don says, "I'm sorry," because he knows this was inappropriate. I mean, how inappropriate to bring this man in. And Mona, although she knows how this works, she can't let them get away with this. And when you have someone like Talia Balsam, I mean, she's in this show for 2 pages and her impact is enormous. I also love that suit. I love how they dress her like a rich Upper East Side woman. They, Janie. This move is exactly what it's supposed to be. It feels very theatrical in a way, like here's these 2 men still facing forward talking, but they're talking the truth. And what he says is, and the actors had trouble with this because it's so in code. Pete knows something's up. And what Cooper's saying is, don't worry about it, Don's in charge. And what this man is saying, what John Cullum's character is saying is, it doesn't matter who's in charge to me, but the board needs to know that Don's in charge, so maybe you might want to bump him up. Show him that you love him, which means that Don's up for a job. And that's explained to us in this scene. Of course, Pete can't stand the fact that Don's getting a partnership. He keeps arguing, like, why do you guys love Don so much? We hear how great Don is. There. Love that. This is real office politics. And character. Paul's insecure, he's a writer. He jumps right to that, because Harry understands how this whole thing works. And we learn that Harry's not just some, like, sweet guy also. He's been playing this a little bit.
So this scene is actually my favorite scene in the whole season. I think it's beautifully written. It's like a roller coaster. There are so many different points that it hits, and it goes up and down, and there's so much going on in this scene that as an actress, when you get a scene like this, it is just a gift. And I loved doing this scene. It's so much fun. She's sort of trying so hard to be like what she has seen. She's trying to be what she has seen women be on dates. What she's seen Joan do, what she's seen other women do. She's trying to do that, and she's doing a pretty good job of it. And she's kind of got a little, like, confidence and sass to her, which is really kind of cute. It's the only cigarette I ever had all season. She's really becoming a part of that world. She's lying, smoking, drinking.
That line lands the way it's meant to land. And he's not too defensive. He talks about his future. He has ambitions. And this whole truck route thing is something that I learned about from another writer whose brother was doing this. She doesn't like potato chips. She really, really steps on everything that he offers. We met Marjorie. She's not a character. She's a pain in the ass, but Peggy's just painting everything in the most interesting light. He keeps trying. And she keeps bragging. She smokes for the first time, and Elisabeth did a great job. It's hard to do that where that cough take, you've seen it a million times. It can be really, really embarrassing, and it's so natural.
She really kind of shows her strength in this scene because she goes after him and she insults him, which is something that the Peggy of the pilot would not have known how to do. And she insults him, and she insults him pretty well. And the last line of the scene, I read it and called Matt and was just over the moon. I just was like, this is the most incredible line I've ever read. I was so happy that I got to do this scene. What's great is he does insult her and she gets put in her place, but again, she doesn't cry. She doesn't stay and take it either. She gets up, gives him a great line, and leaves. It's really shows how far that she's come and where she's going.
They want things they haven't seen.
I love that line. Love it. That's pure Matt. That's pure Matthew Weiner, that line. Yeah, that's how she shows that she's different. She might go out on the date and smoke the cigarette like she's seen the other girls do, and drink like she's seen the other girls do, and talk like she's seen the other girls do, but she's different in the way that if she's insulted like that, she's not going to sit there and take it, she'll leave.
And here's Don's in his office, as in episode 2. And I really wanted him to talk to Dr. Wayne just to keep it up originally, just so we'd know at the end when the phone bill came in episode 13 that he was talking to him from the house. But what the scene really became about, and it's funny, because he has the attitude about psychiatry that a lot of people have, but what's really amazing about it is that thematically what it's supposed to be, and I don't know if anyone understood this other than me and Tom, but it comes across, is that he wants to leave her, but he wants her to be on her own 2 feet. And her outburst about the air conditioning man and everything and letting this guy in the house, her behavior, her childish behavior, makes him feel like he can't leave her.
Thank you.
That's why he calls the doctor, in my mind. And of course, the psychiatrist's solution is more psychiatry, which Don laughs at. So here's Peggy's presentation. And all of this is scripted. She comes in, there's no chair for her.
There's no chair.
They're all waiting. It's business as usual for them. Pete's hoping she'll fail. We know that. She's anxious. And of course, we know what the product does, so how is she going to sell this? And what I really wanted to come across, and here's a reference to the fact that she's still a secretary. She has to type her own stuff.
That's all I had time.
So this is where Peggy comes to make her presentation about the relaxatizer, and it's probably her biggest professional moment so far. A very big day, and she handles it very well. I mean, I think she's nervous and is, probably absolutely terrified, but in true Peggy style, she kind of takes it in stride and does her best.
The rejuvenator.
And I always thought that
gives
she
you the flush and glow.
is making the presentation to the room and to all the men, but I think that she's mainly making it to Don. And it's his approval that she wants most of all.
Whenever you want.
This speech was difficult to do because I had to find a balance between her not being good at it and being nervous, but also had to show that she deserved to be standing up there making that presentation, because she wouldn't be there if she didn't deserve it. So I had to kind of find a balance between those two and showing that she knew what she was talking about, but also still being nervous and still being Peggy. And we did several takes of it going in varying degrees either way, and I think they chose a good one. And as far as Pete goes, at this point, she's completely moved on from him. He's just not even a possibility, and I think she's kind of fine with that. And, you know, after she makes her speech and she's in with the boys and she's at the head of the table and she's one of the guys, and then they just immediately put her back in her place.
And that's, again, that double standard. Part of this is that Peggy's success has required her becoming one of the guys. And that's what this scene was about to me, is that they're treating her like one of the guys. Mitch's wife is very attractive. They wouldn't behave this way if Betty Draper was in there. They wouldn't talk this way. No, they're really talking about sales.
This was a long scene, too. I think my face was like falling off by the end of it. I love that moment because it's very much she got what she wanted, which was his approval. And that look kind of says it all, that as long as he's happy with the work that she's done, then she's good.
Pete gives her a backhanded compliment. I didn't like it. Everybody else did. Harry explains it again to the woman. And this was in the script too. They actually punched her in the arm because she's one of the guys. Because being a woman is not the way to succeed. I don't think the scene needs a lot of explanation. The one thing that I can say is that when I was working with David Siegel and editing it, we talked about how this music, and David Carpenter also, that it'd be great if the music just got louder and clearer during the fantasy, if it was sourced before that. And of course, what happens is you have a shot at the beginning so we can place it, and then the rest of this is all fantasy. This is what would have happened when she went upstairs, and how to make this a woman's fantasy, and not just some guy's fantasy of what a woman would think. And I think some of it has to do with it's explicit but not raunchy. And also, I think the sexiest part of the whole thing is when she's walking in and he grabs her arm and pulls her around. I think that's the passion she's missing. And this is January. This is just something I'm amazed by. She walks in. This was in the thing that she would cool herself off with a fan, but she literally walks in like someone who's just run a marathon. It's really athletic. It's fantastic. And I think it's funny and it's sexy, but it's also very pointed. It's kind of lonely. And here's Peggy.
This just shows how far she's come from the pilot, from the Peggy who didn't know how to use the typewriter, to walking in and asking for a raise. May not be much, but for her, it's a lot. It's huge. And she knows that she deserves it, and she knows that he knows that, and that's why she gets it. And she knows that she's going to have to ask for it, too, that they're not just going to hand it out to her. He says, yeah, well, ask for it. You presented like a man, ask for it like a man. And he's telling her, he's helping her, he's telling her what to do. I think that he is probably her only friend.
Now, this is important that we know where Roger's office is, and that Pete sees that they're walking down there. We know something's up. We know that it's been planted that Don's going to be made partner. This is something that I do to just deal with the television constraints of things. So he witnesses this, and he says, Sterling's going in there, and the audience needs to know that. But rather than just throwing it away as some embarrassing piece of exposition, she actually says to him, are you crazy? It's ridiculous. I should have to watch him. And Pete lets her have it. He's the boss.
And?
I want to make you a partner.
And rather than do a big speech or anything like that, he just offers him the job.
As a symbolic gesture, I think telling me that in here isn't bad.
And Don thinks it's wrong to do it in Roger's office. And rather than all kinds of dickering and things like that, Don just accepts it. Why wouldn't you? The attempt is always to keep it real. And you can tell he's enjoying it. And then he tells him he has to pick Roger's successor. And he says no contract. Which is a strange thing to say because a man would want a contract, but Don doesn't. I love that shot. And he's mentioned Ayn Rand before, and of course we know she's alive. And anybody who knows anything about her knows that she really would like Don. Not just to talk to him, but to be with him. Now here he is. He's in Roger's office, and he's trying it on for size, and Pete comes in and asks, is he dead? Which is the first thing Don said. They're very blunt about these things. And this scene is a scene of Don sort of expressing dominance over Pete, but it's important now that Don gets to make the decision that Pete says that he wants that job, even if Don has to give it to him. They make a very good team. They are successful together, but Don has no interest in helping Pete, but Pete has got to try. And he's rejected in a horrible way. Now there's a time transition that comes in here, and David Carbonaro wrote this great piece of music here. First Don gives her raise and he lets her out early, but of course it's nothing. There's a moment of victory for Peggy, and it's important what he says here. Go out and celebrate with your friends.
And of course, we know Peggy doesn't really have any friends. But she's okay. She's still happy to go home early and have had a good day at the office. And that really does mean something to her. And Don knows exactly what she's talking about when she says, Can I tell Joan? He knows exactly why she wants to tell him, and he approves. I think one of the reasons, too, why people thought that maybe I actually was gaining weight, me in real life, was because we didn't make a lot of references to it in the show. There were comments made by other characters, but there weren't scenes of me eating by myself at home or, ordering lots of food or anything like that. It was really subtle. And I think that's why people kind of got confused as they, thought maybe that was really happening. I love the way he does this. Totally wasted. This episode, Christina and I didn't have any scenes together. And it was very strange for us. We were used to working together, and in the last few episodes, we didn't have anything. But it just shows the estrangement between them and the development of their relationship.
Puts his feet on his desk. This feels good. And of course it makes sense that he would pretend to be Don because he's just been caught doing something embarrassing. And we've done a lot during the season to show packages coming in and what Peggy sees and what Peggy doesn't see. And when the mail comes in, you also see then that prop that Donald Draper spelled wrong again. We know that from the beginning of the show. And I love this shot. This is Hitchcock to me. Tim, it's just amazing. We know what's in that box. We don't know, but we know that Pete shouldn't have it. So this is my dad, sort of kicking my butt lovingly and saying, back away from the set, you'll burn your eyes out. And we didn't even notice he was home. We were watching TV. And he comes to see Betty, and he's had a great take, too. She's had a strange thing, but things have been strained between them. And here's what's interesting, is that she never knows when he's coming home. She lives on that. But there's this thing between them because of her outburst with the air conditioning guy. And so he tells her the good news, and the kiss is awkward because they're in a fight. And she submits. And he stands his ground and doesn't want to talk about it, which is the way he deals with everything. She kisses him. Everything's okay. And of course it's not. And I love this gesture. It's in the script, her running her hand down his arm and grabbing his hand. And the heat wave's going to break, and she gives him this look like everything's not okay, is it? And goes to the fridge. He knows it's not okay.
There's a lot in this episode, I forgot. There's the advertising book that she's studying up on in true Peggy style with a glass of wine. Which that was supposed to be. I don't know if anyone ever sees it, but she's supposed to be drinking wine. One of the few references to her own weight and her noticing it is that look in the mirror. There's actually very, very little. I think that might be it. Her looking in the mirror there might be the only time that she herself as a character references it, that she's noticed. Otherwise, there's very little, which I think is really smart because it's much more realistic that way. There's not a whole lot to do about it. It just kind of happens. She never talks about it.
Peggy's alone. So the final joke and the irony is that she willingly reaches for the machine. And of course the song it's fantastic. David Siegel found that song, the editor, and what I loved about it too is it has this bossa nova thing at the beginning of it that reminds you of Betty's listening to bossa nova classic, actually. An amazing song when she's with the washing machine. And then of course Fly Me to the Moon. But basically it pays off this idea that Peggy's weight gain has been psychological on some level, and she's become a man. And they treat her like a man, and they take her work seriously because she's not sexualized anymore. And that is episode 11, Indian Summer.